Von der Leyen has been in office with her new team for only a few weeks, yet she's already at the center of a severe Franco-German rift, threatening to shake the very foundations of the European Union. At the heart of the discord lies an old, unresolved issue, the Mercosur Agreement, a trade deal the EU and South America have been negotiating for almost 25 years. This ambitious pact aims to connect over 700 million people across Europe and South America, linking 450 million citizens in the EU's 27 member states and around 270 million people in Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay. Notably, the agreement does not yet include Bolivia, Mercosur's newest member, or Venezuela, whose membership has been suspended indefinitely due to concerns over democratic backsliding. Last Thursday, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen jetted off to Uruguay in a high-stakes bid to finalize the landmark EU-Mercosur trade deal, an agreement Berlin eagerly supports but Paris strongly opposes. For Germany, the deal represents a much-needed lifeline, with growing concerns over industrial decline. Berlin sees the Mercosur agreement as a crucial opportunity to access new growth markets and bolster its struggling manufacturing sector. In France, however, opposition to the deal runs deep across the political spectrum. French leaders fear the agreement would flood their markets with cheap Latin American poultry and beef, undercutting local farmers and igniting public anger against both the EU and the political establishment. This resistance is as much about protecting domestic agriculture as it is about avoiding populist backlash. The Paris-Berlin rift is a big deal because trade negotiations are one of the EU's key responsibilities. France's ongoing resistance to the Mercosur deal is frustrating Germany, with some even questioning if Berlin should reclaim control of its own trade policy. Such a move would challenge one of the EU's core unifying powers and raises questions about its very purpose. But is France right to be so worried about the deal? Let's take a closer look at what this deal is all about. The Mercosur trade deal aims to slash tariffs on nearly all industrial goods traded between the EU and South America. For the EU, this means 100% of industrial imports from Mercosur would be duty-free, while Mercosur would cut tariffs on 90% of industrial goods from Europe. The numbers are striking. Tariffs on cars and car parts, currently at a whopping 35%, would drop significantly. Machinery tariffs, now between 14 and 20%, and chemicals and pharmaceuticals, sitting around 18% and 14% respectively, would also be reduced. It's definitely easy to see why countries like Germany, with their export-heavy industries, are super excited about this deal. On the agricultural side, the deal would also reduce or eliminate tariffs on European dairy products, chocolate, confectionery, and wines. Good news for countries like France. But this is where things get controversial. France, along with other EU nations, have major concerns about the imports of so-called sensitive agricultural products. These include duty-free quotas of 450,000 tons of honey, 60,000 tons of rice, and even 180,000 tons of sugar. However, the main point for contention is the beef quota, where an additional 99,000 tons of beef will be allowed into the EU at a reduced rate of 7.5%, alongside 180,000 tons of duty-free poultry. European livestock farmers have fiercely criticized this as unfair competition. They argue that South American farms benefit from economies of scale, operate under less stringent health and environmental regulations, and face much lower labor costs. While the new beef quota represents just 1.2% of the EU's total annual beef consumption of 8 million tons, it still has French farmers worried. But is this really enough reason to reject the agreement? Let's weigh the pros against the cons. On the plus side, this deal would boost trade and strengthen our economies, especially those with strong manufacturing sectors. European trade with Mercosur is already substantial, worth billions of euros annually. For example, German exports to Mercosur currently amount to around 16 billion euros each year, driven by 12,000 German companies and supporting 244,000 jobs in Europe's largest economy. With lower tariffs, this trade could expand further, potentially helping Germany recover from the terrible economic slump it's currently on. Spain is also set to benefit. Projections estimate a 30% growth in Spanish exports to Mercosur once the agreement is fully implemented, adding 0.23% to Spain's GDP and creating over 22,000 jobs. The deal isn't just about reducing tariffs, though. It provides European business with access to public procurement contracts in Mercosur countries, encourages investments, and opens markets for EU service providers, Another key advantage is strategic autonomy. The agreement offers the EU a way to reduce its trade dependence on China, while protecting member states from the potential fallout of trade tariffs, such as those threatened by US President-to-be Donald Trump. In short, the deal is about more than just numbers. It's a strategic tool for ensuring Europe's global competitiveness. And this brings me to the most important benefit. The deal will make products in Europe cheaper, benefiting us, the consumers. There are, however, several more significant drawbacks to consider. Agriculture naturally brings us to the topic of deforestation risks. A 2020 expert report issued to the French Prime Minister warned that the agreement could accelerate deforestation by 25% in the medium term. Increased deforestation also places pressure on indigenous communities, whose land is often claimed for agricultural expansion. Lastly, if South American countries fail to meet their social and environmental commitments, there seem to be few enforceable consequences. So, with all these pros and cons in mind, what's next? Will the deal actually be implemented? France still has plenty of opportunities to block it. While von der Leyen may have signed the agreement in Uruguay, it still needs to pass through both the Parliament and the Council of the European Union. Quick caveat though, this is the most likely procedure, depending on how the trade treaty gets classified. In the European Parliament, the outcome could be very close. Of the 8 political groups, the Left and the Greens are expected to vote against the deal, citing concerns over human rights and environmental impacts. On the far right, the Patriots and the Sovereignists are also likely to oppose it, driven by their strong rural voting bases, which are generally against the agreement. This leaves 4 political groups whose positions are more favorable. The EPP, Liberals, and S&D are likely to support the agreement, though some defections, particularly among French delegations, may weaken their numbers. As a result, their combined support may fall short, leaving the ECR as the deciding factor. Within the ECR, the positions of Italy's Meloni's Brothers of Italy and Poland's Law and Order Party are pivotal. If either of these delegations votes in favor, the agreement is likely to pass. But even if it clears the Parliament, the deal must then go through the Council of the EU, where member states are represented. Here, France will need to secure a blocking minority to stop the agreement. This requires at least 4 countries, representing 35% of the EU population, to say no. How are things stacking up? France, Austria, and the Netherlands have already declared their opposition to the deal. Recently, Poland also joined the anti-deal camp. However, major players like Italy and Romania, both countries with large populations, remain undecided. Without their opposition, though, Macron will lack the numbers to form a blocking minority. Then, if the agreement passes both the European Parliament and the Council, the Mercosur deal will be officially sealed. This is what I think. The EU must prioritize the interests of the entire bloc, not just individual member states. When we weigh the pros and the cons of the Mercosur deal, the benefits outweigh the drawbacks. For consumers already grappling with inflation, this agreement offers a chance for lower prices and greater access to goods. And let's not forget Macron's constant emphasis on strategic autonomy. This deal is a step in the right direction. It helps diversify trade away from over-reliance on China and the US. And will 99,000 tons of additionally imported South American beef really make a bigger difference than 50 billion euros worth of almost tariff-free exports? I don't think so. But what do you think? Do you agree with my take? Or do you think it's a bad idea? We also have a very cool video here about the recent French political crisis, so check it out if you're interested. And subscribe and share if you found this video interesting. A huge shout out to our patrons, Jan, Sjoukje, BJ, Peter, Kristen, and AJVD. Your support makes this all possible.